Hi, I'm Roneil, co-founder of Audius. Something not many people know about me is I started a little mining operation in 2013. That was how I got started in crypto, was just making a little bit of beer money in college on the side.
Welcome to Solana Insights. I'm your host Moo, and today we'll be chatting with Roneil from Audius. Audius is a music, community, and discovery platform that puts the artist in control. The first time artists and their fans can find, communicate, and collaborate with each other directly. Artists are no longer reliant on the middleman to share their music and discover new fans, creating a new music economy for a new generation. Welcome to the show, Roneil.
Hey, Moo, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. All right, I need to ask you said crypto mining, and not only that, with long tail tokens. So what's up with that?
Yeah, so it was kind of a confluence of two things. It was a little group of friends of mine in college, and we saw there was a lot of GPU hardware coming into the secondary market on eBay and elsewhere, just because it was no longer profitable to use that for Bitcoin mining. This was around kind of, I guess, when the transition happened for Bitcoin mining being primarily GPU driven to ASIC driven. So as folks upgraded to ASICs, they had these old GPUs laying around that they were practically giving away. And us being in college and living in dorms, we had free electricity, right? They didn't meter, track, or care, what was being used from a room. And one of our friends was basically living with his girlfriend at that time, or living in her room. So there was kind of an empty room, and we thought, oh well, we can get like 30, 40 GPUs in there, start running a little operation, and
30, 40?
we were mining
God.
these. Yeah, it was very hot. As you can imagine, all that heat has to go somewhere. So we had some fans in the windows, and it actually worked reasonably well until like kind of later spring, when it was just super hot outside, right? That room would get up to like 120, 130 degrees Fahrenheit, or I guess, like 50, 55 C. And we were like, okay, we need to, we are putting this hardware at risk, but also, people are going to get unhappy with us at school. So, but yeah, it worked pretty well for a while there. And it was these S-crypt altcoins. So like Litecoin, Dogecoin, Namecoin, I think. It was at that time there were these coin switching mining pools, so you could actually point your hardware at a pool that would just automatically switch between S-crypt tokens based on what was most profitable at the time to mine, and the pool would actually dump it to BTC for you and then pay you out in BTC. So you wouldn't be getting these like, yeah.
That's cool, man. You are actually the first person that has come on here and is involved in mining. Everyone else, I don't think they've mined before, or they never told me they mine. So the golden question is, you said this was back in 2013. Did you keep your coins till now?
Oh, that is the golden question. So no, I did not. We all, in our infinite wisdom, as early 20 somethings, thought that the best use of our mining proceeds was to go on a great spring break trip. So in 2014, early 2014, we all sold everything we had. I think Bitcoin around like $80-$100 or so, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and we had a great spring break trip, man. We went to this little island off of Honduras and did some scuba diving and hung out, and so no regrets. It was a fun trip, but it's funny in retrospect to think about, for sure.
So you guys are kind of like the pizza guy, right?
A very scaled down version of that. I think the pizza guys spent like 3,000 BTC or something, right?
On a
Like it was
pizza,
like
yeah.
BTC below $1 or
Yep.
something.
Yep.
Outrageous. Yeah.
That was crazy.
Um, I'm sure
That's
he's not hurting now though. I'm sure he kept plenty.
I
So
think people have interviewed him a few times, and I think he mentioned that, he's quite proud of the fact, especially showcasing the possibilities of Bitcoin being an actual currency. So like the fact that, if you want it to be a currency, then you have to use it. You can't just hoard it. So I think he's quite,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So you guys did the same. So fantastic. And then there's this whole Mount Gox thing recently, like those guys are getting back their BTC, which they were forced to diamond hand because they couldn't sell it. So these guys are going to be instant millionaires, which is another crazy story. But yeah, early guys, man, like yourself.
Oh, it is crazy, man. Yeah, we some folks in that group had Mount Gox claims, but I think they
Ooh.
sold them off. There were ways like over the last few years, like 4 or 5 years, that there were folks that were willing to buy your claim to Mount Gox. So I'm not familiar with all the details there, but yeah, it is super super interesting. There were still ways to paper hand during that,
Damn.
but I think because people thought it was just a write off, right? They were like, this exchange is gone and defunct, and God knows where the money went, right? Yeah,
Exactly. Like, no, like I wouldn't fault them. I would have paper handed it, but the way you mention it is quite hilarious because there's always a way to paper hand no matter what, right? So even in this forced time in hand situation, you still don't get rich. It's crazy. Oh man.
yeah, right.
All right. So you seem like you're super like from all the way back in 2013. Like, how did you go from mining in 100 Fahrenheit room to running Audius today, man? That's a long, long, long leap.
It's actually not as long as you might think. So Audius got started in like February 2018. So there's like 4 years in between there for us to fill in. Um, so yeah, in 2014, one of my friends from that group and I, the mining group, started a Bitcoin peer to peer payment project. So I was a software engineer prior to that. That was kind of like what I enjoyed doing, and that was what I was studying in school and whatnot. It was just it was just a very simple thing. Like oh, he and I had a bunch of Bitcoin, and we wanted to be able to send it back and forth to each other. But there was really no good way to do that at the time without like copy pasting a Bitcoin wallet address and texting it or something along those lines. So we built this little, think of it like a Venmo for Bitcoin, is how I describe it, like a social discovery layer on top of a Bitcoin wallet. So very
Mhm.
simple product. Launched it, got it out to about 25,000 or so users at peak, but we just couldn't
Oh.
really figure out how to grow past that. So we wound down the project in, let's see, like January 2015 or so. But yeah, it was a fun ride. We actually kind of beta tested. So Bitcoin and Dogecoin and Litecoin, like all of those early coins were forks of the original Bitcoin code base.
Mhm.
So they all had the same RPC kind of interface. What was cool about that was you could easily change them out within a product. So we started actually as a Dogecoin wallet. So we wanted to kind of have a lower stakes place to test and whatnot. And then we eventually launched the Bitcoin product alongside of that. But yeah, that early Dogecoin community was also super fun to be a part of. That was there was just a very wholesome, fun subset of the crypto ecosystem that unfortunately I don't think is there quite as much today.
Mm.
But anyway, yeah. So the wallet wound down. I was kind of thinking about what might be next in 2015. So I needed a job, right? I was like out of money, and
Spent it
I hadn't
on like
worked
spring break.
for a few years. Exactly, right. Well, and I'd spent like 8-9 months working on that wallet project, or no, actually about a year, and we never raised money. So yeah, I was out of money. I needed a job, so I started pinging some friends to say, oh hey, like, where should I work? What should I think about? And one of those friends was at this venture firm, Kleiner Perkins. I went to catch up with them just to see if there were portfolio companies of theirs that I should think about working at. And he said, well, actually, we really need someone to cover crypto here. So why don't you come to the firm and like do some engineering work for some of our portfolio companies, and then help us cover crypto. And I was like, okay, yeah. So I was there for 2.5 years, from 2015 to mid 2017. And yeah, it was a fun ride. I did the seed round for like Lightning Labs, the Bitcoin Lightning network, if you know them.
Yep.
Did a few others then, but yeah, it was kind of missed getting to build stuff full time, and that's what pushed me to step away. I think also the firm wasn't really structured to be able to invest in tokens directly. So based on, this is a very different time in crypto, right? Like, venture firms weren't really set up administratively to be able to handle playing in publicly traded things, and then especially in what's ultimately different asset class, right? Being these tokens rather than, like, say, equity in Coinbase or
Exactly.
something like that. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So Audius came much, much later, right? You went through all these like different VC firms. You went through your own exploratory startup. That's cool, man. And I think Audius also underwent some transformation, right? It wasn't like obviously it isn't where it was when it first started. Like, things had to shift around a bit. There was a lot of changes. Do you want to like go through a little bit of how that happened? I think you guys are now moving towards a DAO format almost. Like, that's the idea of Audius.
Yeah. So I can definitely walk you through more of that. So yeah, actually, when Audius got started, the kind of mission and intention with what we were doing was to kind of help artists control their own destiny, right? Like, we felt that if artists didn't have control of and access, kind of unfettered access to their fans, they ultimately were beholden to these various platforms. And really the key for us, or the key that like made us realize this, was seeing SoundCloud kind of go through this very tumultuous time in 2015 and 2016. So my co-founder at Audius, Forrest, and I were both just big dance music fans, right? That was how we sort of saw this playing out. But all of our favorite dance musicians were leaving SoundCloud en masse, and we were like, "Why is this happening?" And we started looking around at that, and it was a combination of factors, but ultimately came down to a sequence of policy decisions that SoundCloud made that were not in the best interest of their community, and there was no say in or recourse against that from the community, right? They just had to kind of like, watch their community die. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that was the initial like thrust of Audius, and our go to market, from day one, the plan was to kind of compete directly with that use case that SoundCloud had, which was sort of content hosting for artists that could reach fans directly. And that's actually largely carried through to today. Like, even in the first financing of Audius, it was structured as like a network financing, not like a kind of equity into a company financing. So I think all of that's actually stayed pretty consistent. I think where things have evolved, though, is the tooling and like kind of collective understanding in the crypto community around how we govern these common goods, just as you mentioned, has evolved a lot, right? That was 4.5 years ago. So like even, the term DAO at that time was
I don't think
synonymous with like, it was synonymous with the DAO, which was this like Ethereum thing in 2016 that got hacked, and it led to that fork. So there was a very dirty term at that time. Exactly. Yeah. Even in the 2017 crypto cycle, like people kind of were still, there was a lot of scar tissue from that, right? Because that led to, there was just this very it was just a mess. So anyway, so you're totally right on that. Like, I think that's where, we had that idealized vision of this kind of music distribution commons that was owned by, operated by, controlled by its community. We didn't have the same terminology and a lot of the same tools to affect that in 2018 that we do today. So, yeah.
And you mentioned, I think, like one of your interviews, you said that one of the core thing that you guys are trying to fix, is inequalities that stem from outdated business practice or practices. I couldn't agree more, right? And I think it's the reason why crypto in general is scary to old industries, because it's really poking at all these fat cats. I don't think it's just like SoundCloud is an issue or SoundCloud is a big guy, but you're poking at Spotify, you're poking at YouTube even. So, like, has there been any like pushbacks or these big companies trying to get scared? I know there's a lot of politics, a lot of lobbying that goes on with all these big guys. So has that like creeped in yet or not really?
That is a great question. So it definitely has creeped in. This is a more recent development, though. I would say the last like 6 to 12 months.
Means you're going somewhere.
So,
when you're taking notice.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly what I was going to say. So, like when we first got started, we actually kind of made attempts to reach out to those folks and just share what we were doing and see if there were ways to be kind of collaborative. And everyone brushed us aside, right? So we're like, well, this thing is tiny and no one cares about it. And then some of those folks came back to us, starting around a year ago, and we're like, oh, why didn't you ever talk to us? Like, and I was like, oh, we tried, but like you didn't want to. And then the tenor of the conversation changed a bit. But yeah, it's definitely funny to see that. I think you're absolutely right. Like no one cares about what you're doing until it starts to have some impact. Like today, Audius is serving 250,000 or so artists and over 7 million fans every month. That's enough crazy. That like people can't ignore it, right?
Yeah.
But we've definitely gotten some pushback, but it's always come from a place of confusion, I think. And when we've had the chance to kind of walk people through, like, here's how it works and all of that, like I think actually the institutional kind of players in the music ecosystem like get excited about it too. This is sort of for anyone who is like beholden to these existing distribution platforms. Like the promise of Audius is a more free and just place to be able to distribute and to reach fans, and ultimately that means kind of more of the pie is available from a financial perspective for the existing incumbents, just as it is for artists. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting, like, to your point, like there's Audius is at the end of the day a disintermediation kind of a play, meaning that like we're helping we're removing intermediaries between the artist and the fan, right? We're trying to create a place where like there's this direct access economy that can exist. But it's targeted at like a specific set of intermediaries, and I think there are other folks in crypto that are trying to go after like the more institutional owners of content and whatnot, you know, and disintermediate them. From the perspective of Audius, like we don't care who owns content. Like as a network, the network doesn't care who owns it. Like it's just, you know, it's just a set of tools for distributing it, right? So like if you're independent and you own your content and you distribute it on Audius, it's treated the same by the network as like if, you know, a major label owns that content and distributes it on the network. Like they would both get paid out in the same way. So the network is like indifferent to that. So that's why I think like when we've gotten the chance to walk through these things with the institutional folks, they're like, oh, this makes sense, right? And like they see opportunities to kind of use these tools as well, which is cool.
Cool, man. I had no idea your stats were so crazy. 7 million in terms of users, and 250,000 artists. So we just added to that list. We are 250,001.
Amazing.
Solana Insights will be up there too. And your app is fantastic. We love it. It's an amazingly smooth experience. So I can't be excited more for you guys. I'm going to quickly jump into like tokenomics, because I think that's something a lot of people are interested about as well. And correct me if I'm mistaken, Audius basically issues tokens to musicians, right? If they upload their music. So I think that's a lot on the inflation side, meaning you're doing emissions, you're giving it out, like, you know, all the other platforms. Are there plans in place to kind of soak up the demand as well? Are you guys thinking of going to more of a subscription service where people, you know, can support the artist that way, or, you know, any form of like demand soak up for the tokens?
Oh yeah, that is a very, very good question. So so the tokenomics today, I think, are largely structured towards incentivizing initial growth, right?
Mm,
The network needed to reach kind of a critical mass of both fans and artists, I think, before it started to make sense to introduce, for example, like direct user monetization.
mm,
But in that intervening period when the network was bootstrapping itself, some form of economics needed to exist, and that's what the token has served as the stand-in for so far.
okay.
So the way I see things kind of evolving is over the next like 3 to 4 years or so. There's a number of these features are going live in the next 8-9 months, but I think their impact on the network will kind of play out over a longer time horizon. There are these direct monetization tools going live. Actually, you know, as we're recording this, the first of these is going live later today. So
Oh,
excited about that. And
alpha.
um, yeah. So there's kind of a sequence of tools going live that'll help artists charge fans directly for specific things. So think like I could charge you to listen to a given specific piece of content. I could
Mm,
charge you a recurring subscription to listen to, say, a basket of exclusive content that I set aside only for my subscribers. Maybe my subscribers are the only ones that are able to like DM me and message me. Things along these
right.
lines are the ongoing requests that we get from artists. So
Mm,
and we have a number of artists. You know, there are artists on Audius now that have like 200,000, 300,000 followers just within Audius. That's enough, right? That you could convert a few percent of your user base to these paid offerings and actually be making very, very meaningful money, right? So how that links into the token economics, though, is a percentage of every payment made within the Audius network. So like if you're an artist, I'm a fan, I'm subscribing to you, 90% of my money in that subscription is going to you. 10% of that money is actually going to people who are staking the token to help operate the network. So be that hosting content, hosting metadata. There are a lot of different ways that folks can kind of support the Audius network through staking, but through doing that as a staker, those individuals earn a percentage of all the kind of money changing hands across Audius. So yeah, that's that's where I say over the next 3 to 4 years, like we expect that kind of financial flow to kind of augment the inflationary side to a point that it's kind of more meaningful than the inflation. It's also worth noting too, though, if you're actively staking the token right now, that inflation is actually to your benefit, in that like you're earning a greater amount per epoch or per cycle through staking rewards than you're losing to inflation. So it's really, I think the inflation actually will likely stay there forever. That's kind of up to the community, right? That's all of these things, I guess, are up to the community. So I should qualify all of my projection as being
To the
subject
DAO.
to exactly. But I think this plan has gained pretty broad support across the community. So folks have been excited about it. But anyway, long story short, I think the inflation is still valuable even in a world where that revenue flow is more substantial than the value earned by inflation, because it's a disincentive towards passively sitting on tokens, right? Like the goal of the token and the ecosystem is to incentivize active participation, right? And that's also true today, right? So if you are actively participating with your tokens, you're not being affected by that inflation.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff you mentioned. So one of the few things I picked up in there was a little bit more utility. I think there are like other music platforms who are exploring that as well, kind of like a vault system where you can put stuff in there, more tracks, or you can follow the artist, like you said. Maybe they can allow you to TN them directly, almost like a VIP club. So is that kind of like a similar direction that Audius is trying to expand on?
It is, yeah, yeah. I think this is definitely not unique to us, right? Like
Mm.
that. Even pre-crypto, Patreon is the place that folks have
Oh
been
yeah.
using to kind of do this today. The issue in our eyes, and what we've been hearing from our community, has always been that there's not a good way to source top of funnel into those subscription channels and whatnot. What I mean by that is, if your fans don't know about your Patreon and don't have an easy way to find it and discover it, because where your fans exist today is on platforms like Spotify, for example, that don't allow you as an artist to actually speak to them, right?
Yeah.
There's no channel through which an artist can actually say, like, message all of their followers on Spotify. That the kind
And
of
you guys can.
missing link has been top of funnel, and yeah, for us we can, right, because through the free content that folks release on Audius, that is the source of top of funnel for them, right? Like if you release 1 or 2 free tracks, you can build up a pretty meaningfully sized fan base, and then start
Right.
to convert some percentage of those into your paid offerings.
That's cool, man. All right, I have a really tough question for you, and this is the last tough question before we go into more fun stuff. um, so like, I think one of the few conversations I've been having with other people is revolving around NFTs and what it means to basically have an NFT, right? So this is an open debate, but specifically for JPEGs as NFTs versus regular JPEGs, the only main difference is ownership, because anyone can copy and paste a JPEG, like how anyone could probably, like save the audio for a track that's being played on Audius. So it's it's nothing to do with the consumption or the enjoyment of the JPEG or the enjoyment of the track. The only distinctive factor is ownership. But, you can buy it as a speculative investment. You may think that this NFT goes up or down, but I think a lot of value actually comes from people showing it off because you want to flex, right? You want to go like, yeah, I own like a BAYC, I own like a DGODs on Solana or something, and that goes back to us as humans wanting to personalize our style and showing people, what kind of brands we support and how that relates to us as a person. So I think like NFTs are interesting in that sense where in the music industry, we could have music NFTs too, but it wouldn't allow for that same level of flex because there's just no way for people to show off that, hey, I own this like Audius like track that, is from Beyonce, for example, or any of your top artists there today. So comments on that.
Yeah, so I largely agree with your analysis there. 'Cause I think you mentioned ownership, but it's not like there's any kind of legal rights, for example, that you're purchasing when you purchase an NFT. And I think what you're actually purchasing there is a channel through which to build a relationship with the artist,
Okay.
right? And a way to identify yourself as one of those top fans of the artist, right? So that is ultimately a form of flex, right? But I think where there's kind of a missing puzzle piece at the moment in that chain is that there aren't good ways for artists to identify who are the people who hold my NFTs, and then how can I offer them like a materially different experience engaging with me than a typical fan does. And those are the things that we are very excited about. So, I'm spilling the tea a bit, I guess, right, in terms of what might be on the horizon for Audius. But that's how we see the kind of Audius network fitting into that puzzle. It's ultimately like this kind of projecting out 5 years, 10 years from now, we want Audius to almost be like the fan CRM of sorts, right? Like the place where you have kind of aggregated all of the data that you need around your fan base to be able to identify like who are your top fans, how do you reach them, how are they engaging with your content, and then kind of be able to hyper serve that subset of your fan base. So yeah, that's kind of where we head. But yeah, I definitely agree with you right now. I think NFTs, like to some extent, the speculative value that exists there is due to scarcity, right? In that there's still seems to be kind of more people who are interested in purchasing, engaging with, being excited about NFTs than there are like kind of reputable NFT issuers, especially in music. But that'll change over time, right? Like there's going to be more and more supply of these. And I think the driver of value over time will be less speculative and more like, what kind of utility and am I getting from that? And then what does that kind of say about me as an individual? So like anyway, I know I've talked a lot on this. I'll leave you with one last thought, which is, if you're a big fan of a given artist, like oftentimes you'll buy their merchandise, right? You'll buy a sweatshirt from them, or you'll buy a hat, or you'll buy something like that. That merch is usually like, $100 plus, right? Like it's not obviously not being sold at the cost of like, what does it cost for, a Hanes sweatshirt or something, right? But
and the value goes up. The value goes up if you have a signature on it.
It does. And yeah, that's also like, it's exactly like the provenance of the item with respect to the artist actually contributes value to it, right? But also people just buy it to signal publicly that like, oh, I'm a fan of this person, right? I want to wear
Mm,
that clothing. I want to, and I think as much as we all want to say we're sort of egoless and ego free, like all of the decisions we make around what clothes to wear, what the way we kind of carry ourselves, that is done with an eye towards projecting a certain image, right? Even if that
absolutely.
image is like the lack of image, right? For the kind of norm core crowd, right? So
Yes.
so yeah, I think NFTs will have utility from that perspective, but I actually see the value of scarcity declining over time.
Okay.
Like I don't think sweatshirts from a given artist really gain value necessarily by being intentionally scarce. The source of value there is more like that someone is able to signal that they're a fan of that artist and do so in a very public way.
Absolutely. All right. So you spoke a lot about what Audius is building, your next few years, but if you could just describe the future of the music industry 10 years from now, what would it be? Do you think YouTube would still be around? Do you think Spotify would still be around? Like, what would the landscape look like?
Yeah, I actually think all of those tools will still be around. I think they're serving different audiences, and they have utility, and I think we'll have durable utility going forward. But I guess where I see the big change coming is really in kind of the economic structuring of how artists are reaching the market and how much control they have
Mm,
over their distribution. So the music industry today generates about $43 billion a year in revenue. That's across
oh,
everything from like merchandise we just talked about, live music, recorded music. So like streaming as a subset of recorded music. All
yeah.
of that altogether is about $43 billion. Artists only capture 12% of that today, though. So the other 88% of all of that revenue is
Oh
going to
man.
various intermediaries, and folks that sit between the artist and the fan. So I think what we're going to see is kind of an equalizing of those economics. I think artists are going to be making a larger share of that pie. But I also think there's going to be this reorientation of control in the
Mm,
ecosystem, right? Where today there are like 3 or 4 layers sitting between the artist and the fan. I think there's this kind of like scalable direct engagement economy is going to kind of upend and reshape the way music and music kind of creators are monetizing. That's obviously biased. Like I think Audius is a big part of that, but I think a lot of others are part of that too. For example, like concert ticketing and live events. Like I think
oh
the
yeah.
way that happens and the way that ticket resale happens and whatnot, like will also be reshaped by these same forces.
NFTs are perfect
So
for that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm super excited, man, for all that's to come. But yeah, if history is any guide, the music industry, the way that the music industry primarily monetizes has been remade on a roughly 10 to 15 year cadence, going all the way back to the first rise of recorded music with like vinyl records, transitioning to cassette tapes, transitioning to CDs, then CDs getting kind of decimated by piracy in the 2000s, and then streaming kind of being the knight in shining armor that kind of resuscitated the industry. We're due for a new music business model, right? Streaming kind of began to
Yeah.
gain traction in 2008, 2009. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun few years here as that transition begins to play out. But we're excited for it.
I love it. You're tracking even the years of 10 to 15 years cycle. Damn, you guys are scientific there, man.
I mean,
Amazing.
it history is the best guide, right? I mean,
Yeah,
history doesn't usually repeat, but I think it
it
does. It
rhymes.
does rhyme,
It
right? There's
rhymes.
yeah,
Fully
there are
agree.
patterns. Yeah.
Yes, fully agree there, man. All right, good stuff. So let's hop onto the more fun stuff. I want the users to get to know you, Roneil, a little bit more. So what's I know you woken up super early today. Thank you for that. I don't know if you're still having the jet lag or you're like, oh dang, I should have promised me to wake up at 6:30 a.m. today. Did
Oh
you have
no, man.
breakfast?
I am still jet lagged, so I'm good. I was up like 30, 40 minutes before we hopped on here on my own.
Okay.
It's only 7:30 here right now.
Okay.
Or sorry, I woke up at 7:30. It's like 8:20
Okay.
a.m. So
Not super
it's really not that early. Yeah.
okay. Did you
Um
have breakfast?
I did not. I don't eat breakfast.
Oh
It's maybe a
no.
bad habit, but I usually just have a black coffee and then I start my day.
Would you like to have breakfast if someone gave it to you?
uh, oh, that's a good question. No, I think I'm just not hungry in the mornings anymore.
Okay.
I've just gotten used to that cadence. So I eat lunch and dinner,
Hmm,
but I don't usually eat in the morning.
that's interesting. So what's your perfect meal then? Be it lunch or dinner? What's like the perfect meal for you?
Uh, I love food. That's like one of my great joys in life is getting to eat amazing food. So
So you are
hard
a
to.
live to eat person, not an eat to live person.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right.
Yeah, so it's hard to say like one specific meal, but certainly one of my favorite meals is like a big sort of multi course Indian food, like North Indian food feast. I'm half Indian by ethnicity, so that's sort
Okay.
of what I got to grow up eating, and maybe there's some reminder of home from that,
Yeah.
but yeah, that would be my I think my pick if I had to pick.
I love that. So specific. Multi-course in North Indian cuisine. It has to be North Indian, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And just to distinguish, because I know there's the food is very different. I know both North and South Indian, they use a lot of spices, there's a lot of curry. But how would you like distinguish between a North Indian cuisine and a South Indian? Like what's the most like, I don't know, famous food that screams North Indian versus South Indian?
Yeah, so I might get some hate here from like the true
Uh-oh.
Indian folks, right? Because I grew up in the U.S. But when I think of North Indian food, I think like heavier curries, cream based, typically a lot of meat as well. Not beef, never beef, but like goat, lamb,
Mm,
chicken, all of that. But the quintessential like North Indian kind of dish to me is chicken mukkanwala or like butter chicken is the
I love butter
the kind of
chicken. Yeah.
the colloquial term. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like it's amazing. I don't know, the British claim some credit for that. I don't know if that's actually the
They claim
origin of
everything,
it
bro.
is from the UK or not. Yeah, they do, right? So they just colonized everyone
Exactly.
and claimed it for themselves, right? So I don't know if it's British or if it's Indian, but that's certainly like when I think of what's North Indian food, that is the dish that like comes to mind.
Okay. And South Indian, like
Whereas
what's
South Indian foods like yeah, it's much lighter. Think like kind of coconut based in some cases. A lot of what meat there is fish, but there's typically not meat in that cuisine. Um, and then yeah, I guess other things are like if you've ever had dosas, like that thin, crispy, kind of
I love that.
crepey pancake. Yeah, that's South Indian.
Okay. Cool, man. Now you're making me hungry. Dang it. You sure you don't want breakfast?
Yeah, I'm good right now, but you should go get some Indian food for dinner then.
Yeah, man. All right. You mentioned family in there, right? Because North Indian food reminds reminds you a bit of family. Do you think that, family sort of shaped the way you are today? You obviously were very adventurous, diving into new industries, opening a mining setup in your dorm. I think like your news that came out of that as well. I remember reading news about that. So like, do you think your upbringing played a part, or was it more of your adult life when you mingle with friends? Like, what would be the thing that you would attribute that made you are, who you are today?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was I do think my family had a lot to do with that in one key aspect, which is that they always kind of, both my mom and my dad always encouraged me to try new things and
Mm,
experiment with new things, and they would never like be mad at me if it didn't work out. Their response
that's
was more
cool.
like oh, like you learned something, and this was an interesting experience, and whatever, right? So
Roneil,
like
I
I
just
think
want
I
to pause
grew
there.
up.
That is very uncharacteristic of Asian, especially Indians, because they're
Yes,
usually
yeah, yeah.
that's cool.
No,
All
I
right.
think you're absolutely right. I also think a lot of it feels like, even seeing this now as some of my friends are starting to have kids. It feels like there's this kind of pendulum of sorts with parenting. Like if your parents are overbearing, you're going to be less, less kind of helicopterish with your own kids. But then your kids, when they become parents, will like swing back to being more
Yeah,
helicoptery because
it's your
they're
cycle.
going to feel like, oh yeah, like our parents were too hands off, or
Exactly.
whatever.
It's the cycle.
But yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're totally right. Yeah, I was really fortunate in that way that my mom was. So my mom is Indian, grew up in India, and moved to the States when she was
Nice.
like 18 or 19 years old.
Mm,
Yeah, she was very supportive. She was never like, like, oh, you have to, do X, Y, and Z, and if you don't, or if you decide you don't want to, like, that's not okay. I think I would credit like me being kind of comfortable with um screwing things up sometimes, and
mm.
also being comfortable with trying new things with that mentality, I think.
That's cool, man. And when you told them, hey, I'm gonna go full time to Web3, remember that mining thing in my dorm? Yeah, I want to do that for work. What did they say?
I think they just thought it was like a fun, another stupid adventure or whatever that would fizzle out in 6 months, and they were like, "Sure, yeah, like that sounds cool. You should do that." Um, yeah, and so I don't know. I don't think they ever expected it to become, like that area of work to become what it has for me, um, but yeah, they were still supportive. They were like, that's cool. Like you should try it.
And they must be super proud of you like today, right?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. Yeah, yeah, I think they are.
I remember reading a story of the Pepsi CEO, I think the Pepsi CEO, where she would go home and I think her mom or her mom-in-law was like, hey, you need to go buy the milk because we don't have milk at home. And she's like, come on, man. I'm like the Pepsi CEO. You want me to go out and buy a milk? And she still did it. Like it's just culture, right?
It is culture, and like that. If my mom ever asked me to do that too, I would do it in a heartbeat. Right? You owe your parents your existence, I think, right, as a kid, and you have to kind of pay down that debt over the rest of your life.
Man, full respect, brother. Full respect. Ah, all right. So you've seen a lot of things. You began trading so early. I want to ask you, what is your worst trade ever?
I mean, dude, probably trading all of my Bitcoin to go on spring break in 2014. I don't think I can think of much worse
Oh no.
of a trade than that.
That
I would
yeah.
actually say I'm not a trader. I don't I don't think about things, I think, from that perspective. Like I'm
Mm,
I'm much more. excited by like multi-year opportunities to like
Mm,
build and create value than to try to like kind of exploit inefficiencies in the market to increase like my ability to capture someone else's value. If that makes sense. I
yeah,
think both of those mentalities have to exist, but I think I definitely skew towards the like wanting to build stuff side of that.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. My whole stance is, let's build together because that's how we create value for everyone, right? So at the end of the day, we're expanding the pie
Mm-hmm.
so everyone can get a bigger slice of the pie. There's not much point trading and stealing someone else's pie. You're not really adding to the whole crypto industry growing or adding value to the world in that sense. So right on with you, man. All right. The most
That's awesome. Well,
embarrassing.
I'm excited to see what you build, man. That'll I mean, this podcast is part of that, I guess, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
this is a form of creation. Yeah.
this podcast is more of a annoyance more than anything else. It was my annoyance in not being able to find all the amazing projects that exist in Solana. So, we're Solana Insights. Um, so this podcast was my attempt at sort of indexing all the different projects. I want to speak to as many founders as I can and create sort of an on-ramp to new crypto users, normies, giving them basic DeFi, uh, education, and then they can explore on your own. So like that was my frustration. It's not being able to find all these projects. So that's Solana Insight. But I am building something else. It's a whole like GameFi metaverse thing. But that's another story for another day. It's a huge thing there. So absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Well, you'll have to interview yourself sometime.
Maybe you can come on and interview me. Who knows? We can play
Yeah,
that
yeah.
format up. Yeah, be happy to do that. But yeah, I definitely have to interview myself at some point to get that out. All right. The most embarrassing thing you've done in your life.
Oh man. Nothing nothing specific I think comes to mind around that. I'm trying to think of what like I think I was pretty fortunate in like grade school and whatnot to not to not have any of those like life endingly embarrassing moments, right? Let's circle back on this one. Let me think of a good example.
All right, I'll ask you at the end. So we'll go to like a fun game right now. I call it rapid fire. So rapid fire is basically me spitting out different random words and you giving a single sentence response. So don't overthink it. Just respond quickly. We'll go one by one, super fast down a chain.
All right.
Righties. So the first one's easy since you kind of alluded to that, but coffee.
Oh yeah. I mean, I guess yes, but espresso is my coffee of choice.
Right. Anonymous teams.
I like them. I think it's the way of the future in crypto.
Whales.
I think they're a necessary part of the ecosystem.
Right. Swimming.
I love swimming, man. Looking at the ocean right now actually is
Oh,
very
jealous.
peaceful.
Crypto influencers.
I think the good ones highlight really exciting kind of things happening and bring visibility to it. But there's also I think unfortunately a large contingent
Mm,
that use that platform to
mm,
further themselves financially rather than doing kind of useful
absolutely.
work.
Digital land.
I think digital land projects are super exciting. I do think there's a bit of a speculative fervor around owning land that has no purpose yet, though. I wish folks would spend more time building the utility for that land than focusing on selling land.
Agreed. Remote work.
I love remote work. Yeah, we
Looking at the ocean.
Audius is fully remote.
Oh,
Yes, yeah.
damn. Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, you're good. Yeah, I was saying, just saying, Audius is fully remote. But we were all in office actually before COVID, and I think we've been really happy with the choice to go fully remote
Mm.
in mid 2020 or so. Like we don't plan to go back.
So you guys gave up the lease.
Yep, yep.
Nice. And how big's the team, if you don't mind me asking?
We're about 35 right now.
It's good size and all fully remote. Very
Yep.
nice. All right, last one or last two ones. Sorry, Satoshi Nakamoto.
Big fan, I guess. And back to the Anon team question. He
Mm,
was the like OG Anon founder, right?
he was. He's the only guy that like hasn't showed up despite all the wealth, which is crazy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the guy's crazy. All right, and last one, Solana Summer.
I'm here for it, man. I think every summer is going to be Solana summer from now on. Obviously, we're big fans of Solana, and I think it enabled a lot of this growth that I got to talk you through over the last
Mm.
year or so.
And
Yeah, Soul
Audius has a
Summer is
special
every
relation.
summer, man.
Audius has a special relationship with Solana, right? Because you guys have Audius as an SPL token.
Yeah, so Audius is actually both an SPL token and an
ERC.
ERC20 token.
Yeah.
So it kind of exists on both sides. But yeah, I think we were among the first to build on Solana. So we started or
Mm.
kind of like formally announced the migration in like I want to say October 2020 or so, September October 2020. And yeah, we've been very very happy with that choice.
Fantastic. Love it. All right. Do you have an answer for your most embarrassing thing?
um, I was trying to kind of think more on this as we were talking through
The
those
rapid fire.
those other questions, right? Yeah, no, I don't have a I don't have a really good
All right.
answer.
We'll substitute. We'll
I think it
substitute.
was
Oh, you want to
yeah,
go ahead?
yeah. No, I
All right.
think substituting
All
is
right.
good.
So substitute. Since you've been in the industry for quite some time, the music industry, the crypto industry, are there any behind the scenes info that not many people know about that you would think they would want to know, or anything juicy?
Oh, um, oh man, there's a lot there. I think one of the things that like kind of I don't know if this is juicy so much as it is it's just kind of like I think what really makes our community so different from many others is that like these kind of personalities that you see on on Twitter and wherever else that have big prominent audiences, like
Mhm.
they're actually typically quite accessible as individuals, right? Like if you have a good reason for wanting to talk to one of them or putting something in front of them, or like approaching them from like a fundraising context, it's actually like quite easy to do that. Which I think is one of the parts of this industry that like inevitably it has to go away, right? That doesn't scale.
Yep.
But I think in the moment right now and for the next few years, like definitely make use of it, like shoot your shot, because people will be excited to hear it and to get to engage. Um, so yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a boring one. That's not very interesting. I think maybe the more interesting ones are kind of the movers and shakers and kingmakers, if you will, of the crypto community.
Mm.
Definitely do exist. And as I think as much as we have tried to, as an ecosystem, like build in a fully like meritocratic egalitarian sort of manner, I think there is some sort of like natural aspect of like human society, human organization that like a lot of the same structures I think have reemerged in crypto, just with different kings at the top of them managing them, right? Than the traditional financial system. So I'm hopeful that I think where the aberration to that is DeFi, right? Like these sort of financial protocols don't care who you are, where you come from. They just they do what the code says, right? Whereas, I think seeing what's happened with Three Arrows Capital over the last few months, for
Oh
example,
man.
that's like such a signal that like this is no this basically exact same kind of, well, not exact same, but like very similar situation played out in the 90s around this hedge fund called long term capital management, I believe it was called, where them
Very
going
long term.
down threatened to kind of very very long term, threatened to kind of take down the whole financial system. And it was a similar kind of thing. There was like a Nobel laureate was one of the guys who started this hedge fund. They had printed great returns for like 2 years. And then this like two sigma, event happened, or something that was like way out on the probability curve. And it just like,
RIP.
completely destroyed them. Yeah. It's just kind of wild. Yeah.
Cool stuff, man. Well, I asked this last question to everyone that comes on the show. What percentage of your success was due to luck?
I would venture to say a substantial portion of it. Everything from like I happened to get to be born into a family that had values like we got to talk about, to being able to grow up without having to worry about like how am I going to eat and stuff, right? Like my family was fortunate, and I had a fortunate upbringing, right?
Yeah.
That was all luck. I didn't do anything to deserve those things. And I think similarly, right, it was, it was, there was a lot of luck in there. I was fortunate to kind of stumble into opportunities over the years, right? But I think what we all can control is like our openness to receiving that luck and to
Yeah,
seizing those opportunities as they present
exactly.
themselves, right? So
Exactly.
like you can't control when luck happens, but you can put yourself in a position to be lucky. And I think that's kind of the best. You can't, put another way, like you can't change the cards you're dealt, but like you can change how you respond to them, right? And
You can keep getting
yeah,
more cards.
so yeah, exactly, right.
So what number would you give it?
Oh, I don't know. Like given the sequence of things that had to go right
Uh-huh.
to for me to get to like work on these things that I do now and have a lot of fun doing it, I don't know, probably like 50-60% plus.
Wow. Wow.
There were a lot of other people, realistically, who had the exact same opportunities that I did and like did not choose to seize them, right? Just as I chose not to see it, like take advantage of a lot of opportunities that hit me upside the head, right? Like having
Mm.
Bitcoin in 2013 or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think there's, I think it would be foolish for one to discount
Mm.
the amount that like luck and probability plays in your life, right? Like you can't always control outcomes and everything else, but you can do your best to like optimize with what you have, right?
Fully
And I
agree.
think that's
Yeah.
that's all that we can do. Yeah.
Yep. Fully agree. So, who would you like to nominate to come on to our show next?
Ooh, well, I don't know who you've had on so far. I haven't gotten to like go through the full list, so I don't want to repeat,
Well, just let
repeat
me
someone
know.
who's already been on.
Let me know,
Yeah,
and
I would
I'll
love
say yes or
to.
no.
Yeah, yeah. How about Matt Beck from Solana Ventures?
Matt Back? No, don't think I know a Matt Back.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he kind of like covers so much of you know, all the things happening in across the Solana ecosystem. I think he would have a really neat perspective on,
Yeah.
like what's interesting. He's also just a really, really nice guy. Yeah, I can send over some names after this, but
Sure.
definitely definitely excited to see
Matt,
I
come
think the
on.
work that you're doing to kind of um to catalog what's happening in the ecosystem is fucking awesome, man.
Thank you so much, man. So the last question. Are you smiling right now? And did you have fun on the show today?
Yeah, I am smiling and I had a lot of fun. This was great.
Awesome, dude. Well, that's pretty much it. It's crazy, but it's been like an hour plus. Time flew by. I had so much fun with you. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Right on, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, people. I hope you enjoyed listening to our podcast. Our Solana Insights podcast is all about having real conversations. We talk to builders and users of Solana and make their stories available to all. To listen to more of our episodes, come find us on YouTube, Spotify, or Audius. And if you like to chat, hit us up on Reddit or Twitter. Solana Insights is a not-for-profit organization and is made possible by Player 2. Until next time, this is Moo, signing out.